Matchmaker Joe Silva leaving the UFC. Now, Joe Silva is as old school as Big John. I think we heard from Art Davey that after the first one, some random guy sent him notes, right? 14 pages or 20-some pages of what he would do to make it better, or if he was in charge, or just a contribution. So literally a guy that's been there since UFC 2. You refereed UFC 2, and you were at one, kind of behind the scenes. So, again, Leon Tabbs, John McCarthy, Joe Silva, from the beginning.
It's a hell of a run, and I'm being as honest as I can be. It's an absolute loss to the sport because Joe Silva, people don't know where Joe came from and how things did, but he did start writing letters to the UFC with all these ideas and everything, and he was this super fan. And he actually, had some good ideas, and Semaphore, the company that was the ones putting it out on pay-per-view, they started to listen to a couple of things he said. And then when they got into kind of trouble with the UFC losing money and the cable thing, they kind of pushed him to the side. But Jeff Blatnick, who was the color commentator, he used Joe, and he paid Joe out of his pocket for Joe's information on different fighters. And Joe would do the write-ups on the different fighters that were coming out because he knew them all. He knew all the guys from Japan.
Right.
He was this guy that, he fell in love with MMA and just, dove into it. And Jeff Blatnick was one of the guys responsible for Joe Silva becoming the matchmaker, because when the Fertittas bought the UFC, they brought, quite a few people out. They brought me out. They brought Jeff out. And Jeff, they were looking at putting John Lewis as their matchmaker.
Lewis, I heard that, yeah.
And Jeff Blatnick brought up Joe Silva's name, and they brought Joe out, talked to him, and gave him the job. And what he does is not an easy job. Everyone thinks it's easy. It is an incredibly difficult job. And what he does helps me because, Joe doesn't put together mismatches. Which, look at guys can sit there and go out and they can get beat fast. You can look, Conor McGregor beat, Jose Aldo fast, but that's not a mismatch fight. That's two great fighters he's putting together. And when you have these mismatches, it causes me as an official problems. Joe Silva never caused me problems. I love Joe Silva. Joe Silva was phenomenal at his job, and I'm sorry to see him go.